Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters. It is a pleasure to see many of you today, especially on a Sunday morning. Welcome to our panel discussion where, together with our panelists, we will discuss and reflect on their leadership journey at District 91. Here is the format for this afternoon. I have three panelists with me, each of them bringing in a unique perspective on district leadership on Toastmasters District 91. They are here to share their reflections on leadership at Toastmasters, and of course, to share too the good times they have had working with me and the bad times too. I shall invite them to introduce themselves. This will be followed by a few questions from me to get started. Along the way, I may invite questions from the audience, which I will then direct to our panelists to hear their insights and perspectives. As this is a panel discussion, I strongly encourage you all to engage the panelists to ensure we have a good interactive session and that any questions you may have on leadership are answered. Before diving in deeper, please allow me to present myself. My name is Eddy Quah. I am a charter member of Surbiton Speakers Club in Division D, Area 53, and have been a member since June 2015. I have been club treasurer slightly over 2 terms, VP Education, VP of Mentoring, and President at my home club. At the district level, I serve as a district finance manager for the past 2 terms, 2021 to 2022 and 22 to 23. Before that, I was a district finance manager before that, I was a district auditor and also served as a district finance director for 2021 May conference. I am grateful for the opportunity to serve at district level, putting plans and budget together, managing the district financials, and delivering insights from data to ensure our district is in good state of sustainable financial health during my time. At the district level, one sees things from a different lens, and that has been useful in terms of leadership and communication skills development. That is me in a nutshell. And with that, let's get our panelists to introduce themselves, sharing briefly their Toastmasters leadership journey. Our first panelist for this afternoon is our immediate past Public Relations Manager, Chris Arning. Chris, could you introduce yourself and share with us your Toastmasters journey and your progression from club to district?
Yes, thank you, Eddy. It's a pleasure to be here and welcome everybody. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes, okay. So my journey in Toastmasters, I joined Toastmasters in the UK in May 2017, became a member of Berkeley Square Speakers, President's Distinguished Club in central London. I became VPPR of that club in the years 2019 to 20, and then I took on the challenge of being president through the pandemic in 2020 to 2021. I was immediate past president, obviously helping bed in the new president the year after that. And then I joined the district leadership team under the helm of Rupa Datta last year. And I serve with these three fine individuals. Currently taking a year off, going back to my club, taking part in contests. But yeah, it's always an honor to be asked to take part in these sessions. And I'm really looking forward to it. I hope to share more a bit later.
Thank you, Chris, for the introduction and sharing your journey. Let us now hear from our immediate past district director, Rupa Deva.
Thank you, Eddy, and good afternoon, everybody that's based in the UK and wherever anyone else is in the world. So I joined Toastmasters on February the 1st, 2016, which means it will be 8 years and 2 weeks' time. And I've probably had the most linear route, if you like, out of all of the three panelists to district leadership and last year serving as District 91 Director. So accidentally ended up as Vice President of Membership within 3 months of my joining. The next year I was President of London Trojans, which is in West London. then area director of a small part of West London, a green part of West London, then division director, and then I found myself on the trio. So I served as club growth director during the pandemic, program quality director last year as district director, and this year I am the immediate past district director, which is a recognised role where you mentor and support the new team. And I am serving as district leadership committee chair, which is my main job this year. And I'm also known as, if I can get this working properly, the godmother. And it's on my mum, but maybe it will surface a bit later today. Back to you, Eddy.
Thank you, Rupa. It's amazing. It really feels like a fast-track journey that you took, going from club through area, division, and district, all within 7-8 years. Fantastic achievement there. My final panelist is past district director, distinguished Toastmaster, Helena Boden-Brewer. Over to you, Helena.
Thank you very much, Eddy, and welcome everybody this afternoon. My journey in Toastmasters is probably, again, slightly different than other people's. I joined because I was told if I wanted to continue going to social events, I had to become a member. So I was going along to some membership events that were being held by Holden speakers at the time. And I was really fortunate, I think, because when I joined, I was able to get the support from the clubs that I joined, and then I sort of pivoted and went off and did my own thing. But I had a partner who was very active in speech contests, and so I was regularly at the district conferences. And I think that's when my eyes were open to what the wider Toastmasters opportunities were, and that step beyond club. I was approached to work on a conference team as a registration manager. That then led to me joining the district leadership team the following year as admin manager. Then I went on to serve as PR manager, stepped away from the district leadership team and became conference director, then went back into leadership and was elected to be a division director, and then followed all the way through. So if you're hearing that journey, you'll know that I've never served as an area director, which is an unusual position to be in, but you don't have to have that linear journey. So your skills can come from many ways, and you work with different people along the way, and you're encouraged along the way. And I think that mentoring side of Toastmasters is people seeing something in you and encouraging you to take that step forward. And looking at the audience today, I'm really pleased that when I was division director, 2 of my then area directors are on this call today. So I must have done something right if they're still staying with us, they haven't run away. So Nikita and Andy, great that you're still, I haven't frightened you off when I was your division director. So there you go. So that's my journey in Toastmasters.
Thank you, Helena. It's great to have you here on the panel too. Another fantastic Toastmasters journey. I heard that you have gone through as past district director, past program quality director, past club growth director, past PR manager, past admin manager, but you passed the finance job to someone else. You could have done the whole set of district
very
leadership
true,
team
Eddy, very
activities.
true. But I trusted you a lot more than I trusted myself with those numbers.
So over here we have Chris, Rupa, and Helena, and if we add their time at Toastmasters in leadership position, I think it adds up to about more than 30 years. I mean, there's lots of experiences here, and I'm sure all of you would like to hear more from them. We know very well that the primary goal of Toastmasters is to empower individuals to become effective communicators and leaders. And each of you panelists must have touched the lives of many and changed them for the better. Reflecting on your personal growth itself, in what ways do you believe your leadership skills have evolved or grown over the course of your term? Let's start with Helena.
Thank you, Eddy. I think for me, when I was a member like everybody else sitting in the audience at things thinking, how do they do that? Who runs the club meetings? How do you get involved? I think the first step was definitely joining the club committee and understanding there was a structure. And then seeing those opportunities, going to conference, I think was a really big thing to see the bigger picture of what you were involved with. There were so many fantastic webinars and sessions that you could go to. I say webinars automatically defaulting to online, but a conference that were in person, you would go along and you would meet people who were inspiring. And as a sort of newbie to Toastmasters at the time, when I was in Dublin at the first conference that I went to, and I met and had breakfast with some of these people that were going to be giving workshops later on that day, I was slightly in awe of the fact that I'd sat and had breakfast with them, and they talked to me, this little member of a club that they'd never heard of. So I think that I was impressed and inspired. And then I just saw the opportunities. If you said yes, things just seem to open, doors seem to open. And it's a very different culture from in your working environment where you maybe have a little bit more pushback. So within Toastmasters, people were saying, you want to do this, we're absolutely going to support you to do it. But I think being able to say yes to things, but knowing when you're saying yes, you're going to be supported along the way. People aren't just going to throw you in and just hope for the best. I think that's what I found was like, okay, I can do this because I'm not doing it alone. And each part of those leadership journeys that I've been on and the roles that I've taken, I've found mentors to support me in doing those roles and performing those roles, as well as the teams that I've been working with. And you end up creating a great network of support within the Toastmasters community. I think so. The biggest thing for me is the amount of people that I'm now connected to and how they've supported me in my personal journey without even knowing that they were going to be doing that. Whenever I started in Toastmasters in 2009. So I think for me, looking back at a reflector piece, I am nowhere near that first member that joined and didn't have a clue what was going on, but I could see opportunity, and that was my step for me into leadership.
Thanks, Helena. And Rupa, what about you? Are you able to share in what ways your leadership skills have evolved or grown over the course of your term?
Yeah, there's two things that spring to mind off the back of that question. And the first is that every leadership role, you'll learn different things. So in the spirit of immediacy and recency bias, if I take the role of district director specifically, if I compare myself from the start of the year to the end of the year, I think the biggest reflection for me personally was, as many of this team will know, I've probably got a very, very low threshold for nonsense and quite open about that. However, conversely, I have become more empathetic. And I think that's the biggest thing about being district director for me personally. And if I were to take that slightly deeper, Chris and I have had numerous conversations about the spiritual aspect of leadership and the Toastmasters journey. And whether that's the right phrase, I don't know. But the minute one realizes that Toastmasters is not about public speaking, but about finding your voice is one thing. But then the leadership aspect of that is pushing yourself to a point where you start to find yourself, and not as many people go through that threshold. That would be my takeaway.
Thank you. And Chris, I think the audience would like to hear your perspective as well.
Thank you, Eddy. Yes, thank you for that question. I mean, for me, I would say my Toastmasters journey in leadership began where inspiration met motivation. So, which is to say that I saw someone, in my case, it was Ashleen, who was the president of the club just before me, who, as a bit like that person, in the scene in Bambi where the kind of the young fawn is born and it's so unsteady on its feet. But imagine that fawn like actually starts to walk, and it takes a leap of faith to see that someone do that, someone to step up and say they're going to be president when you can see, and they say when they're on stage that they didn't feel they were ready, and then to see them grow over the years is actually incredibly inspiring. And to see someone build a team, and I was lucky enough to be part of her team, and I think that personal emulation is not to be underestimated, that you see someone and you see that they didn't have all the answers when they started, yet they grew to be a great leader. And I think the natural instinct is, well, if they can do it, maybe I can do it. And for me, that met motivation in the sense that, as I've shared in many speeches, I've got a speech called Pay It Forward, encouraging people to do service. And for me, the starting point of my presidency was I had some bad employment experiences, and in my head I had this block, this mental block, that I didn't want to join corporate leadership teams. One of the reasons I started working on my own, and I'm great working on project teams, but not being embedded in a hierarchy that I can't leave. I like to be managing them. They're time bound, they're project, and they disperse subcontractors. So for me, like, and I think Toastmasters is great in many respects in this, not just not for this reason, but it's a safe space where you can try something out. And it's an interesting paradox because it's a very professional organization and I really take things very seriously. But ultimately, if things go wrong, you're not going to get sacked. And I think there's a real positive. So you can try new things. So for me, it was taking charge of a committee was a really important thing. Without wanting to embarrass our immediate past district director, I think, the emulation was knowing Rupa and seeing what a professional person she is and how her work rate and commitment to things. And so, her tapping me on the shoulder made a difference than someone else, with all due respect to everyone else that I didn't know at that point. It made a big difference. So I think it's the person that asks you as well makes a big difference in terms of your susceptibility to accept that leadership position.
Thanks, Chris. And what I heard from all of you, which I fully agree with, is that Toastmasters provides a safe and supportive environment for you to develop your leadership skills. So, I mean, it's great. And everything you do here, always think about it as a journey of discovery that you're going through. Along the way, you continue to sort of improve yourself and develop, which is great. At this moment, I would like to pause to see if there's any questions from the audience.
I'll ask the question. I think particularly for the two district directors, I think that the role at the top can be, it's an honor to do the role, but it can be lonely, it can be challenging, and it can be difficult. And my question is, in those moments, who helped you? Was it just a mentor, family, friends? And how do you maintain your equilibrium when you've got a team to inspire and help? I hope you can decipher the question.
I'm happy to jump on the back of that. Thank you, Elizabeth. For me, I was probably really fortunate, as I said, about the connections that I'd made along the way. So when I had those tough times, I was able to go back and have conversations with people I trusted, to be able to say, how can we do this? This is my situation. What would you advise? And be able to have those. And so those mentoring relationships, but also the general connection within the supportive environment allowed me to ask questions and help me decide on the solutions that I was going to deliver. I mean, ultimately, as district director, you make the decisions. You have to make a decision. You can't let things drift, because people need to be able to move on from that point. And being able to make decisions and move on, you can go back and review the decision. You can go back and check something out later. Things may change and you may need to pivot. And, when I was a club growth director, it was the year we went into COVID. So my then district director had to pivot. Everything changed. So it's about being in that supportive environment when you need to and taking advice on how to do things. But ultimately, as district director, you make the decisions and you would take things forward.
Rupa, would you like to answer that? Or?
Yeah, so it's a fantastic question. Thank you for the question, Elizabeth, and bringing to the fore that actually it is quite a lonely role. So the positives are you get to select some of your team, and the fact that most of last year's team are on this call is testament to the fact that there was a camaraderie, there was team spirit, and I was very fortunate to have a great team. You will have also seen that from last week's panel discussion, I personally was very lucky to have certainly CGD year and district director year a phenomenal cohort. CGD year, I referred to it, last week. When we needed each other, we were there for each other. District directors, a different kettle of fish. But there was genuinely last year, there was a time where some things were confidential, and I did have a situation where I was like, oh my God, who can I talk to about this? But if you ask the right question, the right answer appears, and I was able to, out of my Toastmasters Black Book, think, okay, this is the only person that I can talk to about this. And I reached out to them, and in Toastmasters, if you ask for help, it's normally there.
Thanks, Rupa. I think we have another question coming from Sushil. Could you unmute and ask the question?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Eddy. So I think working as a team in a Toastmasters event is minus voluntary. Minus voluntary means obviously voluntary is voluntary, you're giving up time because of your choice, but minus voluntary is you have to actually pay and work. So how do you motivate, right? So Rupa, you said no nonsense, but then, if you're working in a professional capacity, you can demand, you can ask why you have not performed. But since it's voluntary, plus I'm paying 180 pounds or whatever it is, and if somebody doesn't perform, how do you motivate them to become an exceptional team player and deliver exceptional results?
Thanks for the question. Could I redirect the question to Chris? And the reason I'm doing so is because Chris runs a PR team as a single person, and he needs to create a team to support him. I would like to hear from Chris. How did he motivate his team to support?
Thanks, Sushil, for the question, and thank you, Eddy, for redirecting it. Yeah, I mean, with the PR team, I think team building is one of the most challenging aspects of Toastmasters, because, as you say, Sushil, quite correctly, you haven't got the incentives of bonuses, promotions necessarily in the conventional sense that you do in the traditional corporate hierarchy. You haven't got the potential sanctions of disciplinary action necessarily, or you could, but it's not really going to be necessarily effective in the same way. And that was what someone at my club told me. A president called an ex-treasurer called Prakash told me that's why Toastmaster is a talk to test for leadership, because they take away the traditional levers that you would have in like a military organization or in a traditional company, in a government, even an NGO. So you are left with, well, one, your charisma and building rapport and vision, which, as I've said, is really important to inspire people. But I think what's so important in that context, and this is something I've noted down in response to one of your questions, Eddy, is I think when you team build, you really have to try and align the motivations of your team members to the tasks. If you can do that, then there's an inherent motivation that they have, that they're doing something they enjoy. They're doing something that is on their, not bucket list, but on their sort of list of aspirations to achieve for their CV, for their personal gratification, whatever it might be. I think if you can create vision, set out a vision, be consistently inspiring, if you can build good rapport with your team members, and if their motivations are aligned with their functional roles, then you've got a really good chance. It's still going to be hard. Even with that, it's going to be hard potentially, but that's what builds the skills, is because you haven't got those levers. And I don't know if enough people know that about Toastmasters, is those levers aren't there, but that's why it really puts you on your mettle as a leader. Because often people say, like, how does it work? Like, how do you get all these people to work? You're not paying them. This is incredibly professional. Well, because of that, because I believe that the people develop those abilities to inspire, to be clear, to set out vision, and to align and to sell roles. So to actually allow, people to see how their motivations correspond with the role, that's a really important skill. Having said that, I still found it hard to keep a team together beyond my core. But I think it's like what Rupa said. So you just find yourself surrounded by very fine individuals who they're conscientious, they're loyal, they're motivated, they commit to things. When they say they're going to do something, they do it. That's not everyone, but if you can find those few individuals, they'll take you a long way. And that was my experience in the core PR team, although I did have people around that who melted away, and that was frustrating. But I think you're going to have that. When I was president, I had resignations on my committee. I think you've got to accept that's going to happen. And that's part of leadership. And dealing with that is part of leadership. So that would be my answer.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And that actually leads nicely into my next topic, which is building a successful team. I mean, the question has touched on elements of that. But the question I have is that Toastmasters often have diverse backgrounds and perspectives. How did you ensure inclusivity and manage diversity within your leadership team? I would like to direct the question to Helena.
Thank you, Eddy. The good thing about Toastmasters when you are in the leadership track is the training that comes with that. And Toastmasters obviously know that each year you join a new team. So at the beginning of that year, you have to go, okay, we've got to get our team to come together. And Toastmasters often refer us back to the Tuckman model. I think a couple of you may be aware of that model. And it allows you to then form the team, get the team to perform, and over those stages, then obviously the team will start to deliver the results. It's not an instant. There's work to be done to get that team to come together to become performing. And the speed that can happen depends on the commitment to the team. And as within the district, we come up with a district success plan. And that's the first real piece of work that brings together your district leadership team and your commitment to what you say you're going to be doing for the year ahead in your role all falls into that particular piece of work. So if your team are actively involved in delivering the information into the district success plan over their year in office, then they have some skin in the game. They've committed to do something you can refer back to. And the Tuckman model for me, it's used in obviously a lot of project management and other skills outside of Toastmasters, but it's a really simple formula that people actually know which stage they are at as they're bringing those teams together. And having obviously had different teams at different points within Toastmasters, for me, when I was conference director, putting that team together was a completely different set of individuals to help support the conference than it was when I became division director, when the area directors were already in post and I didn't necessarily know everybody that I was going to be getting because they'd been voted into their positions. So again, it's that mix of who you can appoint sometimes and who you are going to be receiving. So the different skills, you may not know the individuals you're going to be working with. So establishing who's got the skill set for what. So if they say, actually, I'm really quite good at this, you have to trust the person that's going to be good at what they say they're going to be good at. And then they deliver for you and you go, okay, I can rely on that person to do X, Y, Z. So I think there's a little bit of that within there as well. And obviously, again, having served in different district leadership teams, we all had different skills that we brought to the table. So each year, something changed. It would align in a different way. Your experience of X then became Y. You know, you gave the knowledge as well. And I think particularly when you're a past district leader and being on one of these panels, you reflect back on the journey that you had, but the knowledge that you can now share back to people as they are looking to form their teams, how to get those dynamics right, how to think about what skill sets they're looking for as they're forming their own teams in different areas. So that's what would be my takeaway on how to build and perform with a working team.
Thanks, Helena. And when you handed things over to Rupa, I'm sure she has different challenges that came into the picture as well. So Rupa, what about you sharing how you went about to sort of include diversity and different background, different thoughts, etc., into your team and leadership?
Well, given that 4 of you are on this call, I wonder whether or not I should do a 360. Right? It's the best way of handling that. We could argue, you know, let's start by defining diversity and inclusion, and we've got to be careful not to use buzzwords here. But we had a diverse team in terms of our football affiliations, and you know, once that came out, right, in its own way, it became banter that did bring the team together, and Chris in particular started comparing where we were as a district on the global league tables on one particular metric to where we are, where Spurs in particular was versus Arsenal in terms of the Premiership. Then you've got the fact, diversity from in terms of people's background and faces and so on and so forth. And to the best of my knowledge, Helena may be able to correct me on this. In District 91 last year was probably the most diverse as a team from that perspective, which again brought its own challenges, but also opportunities. I'm going to finish in terms of talking about it in terms of a team. It's about allowing people to have a voice and an opinion, but remembering that we've all got a specific job role for that year. And those that know what I'm going to say, it. Still staying in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
Ultimately is what it comes down to, right? So have an opinion, allow everybody's voice to be heard in that conversation, but ultimately the role holder for that particular function is in charge of that for that particular year.
Thank you, Rupa. Yeah, it is important actually for me and for the audience to gather insights into leadership style, accomplishments, and the impact that each of you have had on the broader Toastmasters community as well. So as an immediate past district leader, I'm sure you played a pivotal role in shaping the Toastmasters experience for members across multiple clubs in District 91. Can one of you share a strategic initiative or decision you championed during your time?
Happy to go, but
Rupa?
Chris or Helena to go first. Happy to go, but yeah, Chris.
I've got one, but go ahead, Rupa.
I insist you go first.
Why did I open my big mouth? Yeah, I mean, I think from my side, the PR position is an interesting one because it's kind of Janus faced in the sense it kind of looks out. So it should look outside Toastmasters, but by definition, it needs to sort of look into Toastmasters, into the district rather, because it's about, I think at its best, it is creating the camaraderie within the best clubs. Ideally, it should be trying to be part of creating that camaraderie within the district. I think it's a very tough position to do. And my predecessor and my successors, we know it's a hard position. I think more help could be structured within there. However, I feel like the challenge is knowing like how to strike that balance. In my particular tenure, I needed to decide what I was able to do in terms of communicating the message of Toastmasters, talking up Toastmasters, if you will, whilst maintaining my, some of the trio messages. And effectively you are, you're an attaché who's communicating important messages to the membership, to district leaders, division directors and area directors and presidents and committee members, as well as the rank and file of membership, to do with incentives and contests and things. But at the same time, I didn't join for that, honestly. I joined, although I learned a lot doing it, I joined because I feel that Toastmasters is not known enough and the brand awareness is low, given the massive transformation it can get for people. And I feel like there was an opportunity. So I had some modest initiatives that I pushed forward, one of which was getting myself on the national news, which I did with aplomb. And also really making sure that members had opportunities to get published in the press, the business press, and lucky enough to get something I wrote around Liz Truss's speaking style in the national press, but really enthusiastic to try and get the best writers and their loads in the district out there. And then also LinkedIn Lives, to try and get a LinkedIn Live most months and to address topics that maybe aren't addressed as much. So for example, how Toastmasters isn't just about making you a better speaker, it's actually about allowing people to talk about things they find really difficult or help them overcome, big challenges in their life. So we had a panel at the beginning of the year, which I need to go back and look at it. So it was quite moving. So it was somebody who has is effectively has communication difficulties with regards to the way his mind works, to do with being on the spectrum effectively, and how Toastmasters really helps in terms of like how you learn to read tacit signals. So that was one of our panelists. Someone else had developed agoraphobia and fear of social situations during lockdown and needed to be brought out of herself, and Toastmasters helped her to do that. And then thirdly, someone who'd been bereaved and wasn't able to talk about that, with friends and family, ironically, but was able to sort of share on stage. And so I think that sort of shines a light on an area of Toastmasters that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of. So I thought that was really important. And it's a seed that was planted. And I feel like Toastmasters can be a little bit insular. And I feel like, I've got a lot of opinions on the brand, which I'm not going to go into now, but I do feel like getting new blood into the organization is about making us feel like we are for you and to more people, so that more people look at us and go, this is for me. Because I think there's a massive discrepancy between when you get to your first meeting, how amazing that first meeting is. And I think once you get people to meetings, they're going to get sold. Because as I've said to Rupa many times, like the actual meeting is not just a brilliantly structured for the current members, it sells itself. Like, it's very boundaried. People get to share for themselves. They get to learn loads of skills, and it's very evident. No one needs to say, "Oh, hey, look at this." It's like you just come to your meeting and it sells itself. But the problem is, I think the brand can sometimes not allow people to get over that sort of perceived sense of this is not for me. So I tried to do what I could do within the context of being one individual, and that was an initiative that I pushed forward during my tenure, basically.
Thanks, Chris. Rupa, would you like to give your perspective as well?
I could, just conscious if you would like us to move on, I will. But I guess just off the back of what Chris was saying, a couple of points. It really comes back down to why we exist as an organisation and reminding yourself of that. So you've got the district mission, we've got the club mission, we've got the Toastmasters International mission, and we've got Ralph Smedley's original vision. And translating that at different levels and then ultimately to the member is what counts. So we are here to give as many unique individuals as possible the opportunity to talk, run meetings, and effectively find their voice. So in terms of the district vision for last year, it was striving to reach 5,000 unique members. Forget membership payment and all of that, unique members. And if you break that straight down to club level, so District 91, soon to be newest club, there's 3 members of that club here today. We needed to get 20 unique people involved in this club, right? That's what it comes down to. And having said that at the start of the year, and then maybe going to a TLI or Toastmasters Leadership Institute or a division contest 6 months later, to have members come up to me and say, "Hey Rupa, how are we doing against the 5,000? You know that it's simple enough for people to recognise what that is. And in the spirit of legacy and what's stayed on, given that I was Helena's successor, Helena's thing in leadership was around kindness in leadership. And do we still think about that, those that are aware of it now? Yes, we do. Back to you, Eddy.
Thank you. We will move on to another section for discussion, and that relates to transferable skills. This question I'll pose to Helena, since she has been a Toastmaster since 2009, if I'm not mistaken. So Helena, the question to you is, over the years, what skills have you acquired or enhanced during your leadership role in Toastmasters that you have found particularly transferable to other aspects of your life or career?
Thank you, Eddy. That for everybody within Toastmasters is the benefits of being in Toastmasters, because you don't know what you don't know, and suddenly you're standing in front of a group of people answering a table topic for the first time, knees shaking. Next, you're in a meeting in work, a question is thrown to you, you can suddenly answer it. It's thinking on your feet. Suddenly you see the benefit of table topics when you transfer that over. With the leadership development, the thing that struck me just with the last question, and I was thinking about that, is when I was program quality director, we were online. So COVID was still around. June 2020, we weren't coming out of COVID-ness anytime soon. We were all over the place. What do? We've got to produce everything online. And I think as much as we were in the working environment online, within the Toastmasters environment, that really struggled for many people to stay and get that interest. And we had to come up with a training program that was going to be completely online for indefinitely. And I think that work that we did during 2020-2021 year of creating the webinar series that Andy Hesse ran every Sunday from pretty much end of July onwards. We had a weekly webinar. We had online trainings. We had all of this work that we were doing, the plan that we put together. I think when you look at that big picture, when I look back at what we achieved in that year of a whole online strategy to get communication and education out there, when I then go into work and join those work meetings, I'm really comfortable in that situation now. The amount of webinars that we run, the amount of the fact that we learned about being a Zoom master, how to run meetings, breakout rooms, all of those skills, which we are still using now because most people haven't gone back into completely, being in-person meetings. If you're working with different companies, you will work online because not everybody's in the same room. So those online skills, I think, are so transferable that we learnt in the safety of Toastmasters, and now obviously in our professional worlds. But this, for me, the program quality year on reflection on the work that we achieved in that year was quite phenomenal, to have a completely online training program, which we'd never had within Toastmasters before. That isn't a major achievement, and hats off to everybody in my team, not to Andy there, that was involved in that, because that was huge. Eddy.
Thank you, Helena. I think in my mind, along the similar lines, the question is trying to get an example from either Rupa or Chris, but keep it short, please, in terms of your answer. Can you provide me an example of how your experience in Toastmasters leadership positively influenced your career or personal development? Maybe I'll go to Rupa.
I guess a live example now is I do a lot around career development in terms of my business anyway, and a current project that I am literally working on is effectively training design for another organization. And I got the role because I was able to demonstrate on application how most of my leadership journey, but also specifically the role of program quality director, I was delivering training, designing training, catering training for specific audiences. And it was in the strength of the application. I was able also to find somebody within Toastmasters that was credible enough to put down as my referee, not references available on request, as my referee, direct transferable skills. How can I apply to this particular consultancy project what I have done in Toastmasters?
Thanks, Rupa.
One of many examples.
Thanks, Rupa. Chris, would you like to answer as a table topic question within 1 minute?
Yeah, 1.5 I can do. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of examples come to mind. I think as human beings, and not just as Toastmasters, I think we kind of, once we've hit a level, we tend to take it for granted, and we almost don't remember where we got that skill from. And one example is actually what Helena just referred to, is because I was president during the pandemic, I basically, I wouldn't have learned Zoom unless I was president. So to be able to manage a Zoom meeting, obviously we had Zoom masters, but to had to understand exactly how a Zoom meeting worked with breakout rooms and all that, it meant that when I developed a course, which was online, international, which has become a decent, very good revenue earner for my business in what I do, teaching sort of deep brand analysis using semiotics, like I wouldn't have been able to be as confident. But it's only now, actually, you've asked the question, I realized that, like, how much Toastmasters contributed to that. The second thing is, at the moment, I'm going to the States in next week because I'm being asked to appear as an expert witness in a case. And I'm going to be basically asked, I'm going to be cross-examined by lawyers for 2 days. And I do think about table topics, and I think that definitely helps you being more poised, because, you know, that's what builds credibility. You can't waffle. Even if you're giving more content, doesn't matter how good the content is, after a certain amount of time, and I'm aware that I could fall into that trap now if I speak for too long, it starts to become less credible. So you need to know when to stop, which is why I'm stopping now.
Thanks, Chris. When you spoke about that, I was thinking what I've learned at table topics. Sometimes if the question is too difficult, switch subject. Luckily, you didn't do that
No,
as
can't
a
do
witness
that.
there.
No.
Right. Let us move on to succession planning, the topic on succession planning. I think it's important. And the question here that I have is that, were there specific strategies or practices in place to ensure a smooth handover? And what advice would you give to future leaders about effective succession planning? I would like to start with Rupa on this one.
Okay, I'll take certainly the handover question for sure, and succession planning might be too long, but we'll come back to it if need be. And I'm actually going to steal something that was said from last week's panel discussion, because I do think it was quite poignant and a great way for us to end, and that the handover is not an event, it's a process. And actually, yeah, you can do as much as you can and you want on that initial transition period, but actually the real questions should and will come later on. Now, Toastmasters is an organisation where, if you look, there's a manual for everything. So sometimes a handover doesn't even need to happen. But the nuances, certainly at district level, you're not going to know until either a situation crops up or you ask the question. Now, certainly in the case of Helena and I, whilst District 91's got a really good track record, if you like, of the immediate past district director is always around, I specifically asked Helena to mentor me through that first 6 months to almost formalise that process. And whilst we didn't necessarily meet up every week, or it wasn't that rigid, I knew she was just a phone call away, but I specifically asked for that support as well. I'm going to close there so someone else can speak.
Yeah, that's great. Great answer, Rupa. I'll share my experience. I think in handover for me is a management of change. And if you know who the person is taking on the role from you, it's important to start early as well and have a documentation clearly understood. And in the real management of change, there ought to be a sign-off between the person handing over the job and the person receiving the job. And from that, you actually understand the true handshake between the two person. All right. One additional question.
Could I just
Okay.
jump in and
Helena.
just sort of say, one of the things that with the succession, also with the leadership roles, there is the core competencies document. And so if you don't know what your role is, or you've gone for, or you're applying for a role, you go, well, what does this role involve? Check out the competencies document, because from district director all the way down, it tells you what you're expected to be able to do within that role, and you can match off your competencies. So if you're looking as a succession of who, you know, particularly for the district leadership committee this year, they're looking for people to step forward. Then if they want to know what the role involves and what competencies, that documentation is really handy, particularly for people looking for club growth director, possibly division director. So worth taking a look at the core competencies information.
Helena has jumped and read my mind into the next question I have, which is if you could offer one piece of advice to the incoming leadership team based on the experiences, what would it be? She has already answered that question, so I'll ask the question to Chris.
I think I will say what I said at the conference last year when Aletta Rochelle was over, and I think Rupa remembered this conversation. I joined you guys doing a share rather late, but the question was put to me is that what one piece of advice would you give? And I think the truth is that the standard at which you're performing when you join the leadership team in July is not the standard you'll be performing at in the following year at June. There's a massive amount of progression, and really you want to try and, for me, I think the beginning of your leadership is just try and minimize the mistakes, but the reality is you will make mistakes, and it's just about supporting each other through that. But the one thing I said is try and make different mistakes. So as you move through your year, don't try and make the same mistakes again. Like, you all make mistakes, and as you grow past your comfort zone, you'll be taking on more challenges. So by definition, the things will be trickier, more complex. Obviously, the other way of minimizing mistakes is by having a good handover, just via your first question. So if you've got a good handover, I mean, my only one thing advice on that is, you know, I had a great handover from Olga, who's on the call. Big shout out to her, and tried to replicate some of that for Nikita, which is breaking things down into modules. And as Rupa said, it's not a one-off. You've got to break things down for people and try and make it assimilable. But yeah, once you've got that, it's just make different mistakes. Don't make the same mistake again if you can. That would be my advice.
Thank you. Rupa, would you like to give advice as well? 1 minute?
Yeah, I'll go less than 1 minute, and it's true for club leadership roles as well as district leadership roles. These pins, for the most part, last 12 months. You can keep it as a keepsake, but remember you're renting the role, right? So don't try and reinvent the wheel. Don't try and do something that is not going to ultimately benefit your club or district. The reality is we come in with big ideas, big plans, and you're probably going to only be able to do one thing that year. So work out what it is and do it well.
Yeah, very good advice, Rupa. Yeah, do think about continuous improvement, but don't go big bang with too many things. One thing at a time, things that are manageable. All right, at this point, I mean, we still have 7 minutes left. At this point, I would like to open to the audience for any questions. Over to the audience, any questions for our panel?
I have another question. Obviously, as leaders, our main concern, and number one concern, should be our members, their satisfaction and making that club experience work for them. But as leaders, we know there are 3 metrics by which TI is going to judge us. No, sorry, not judge us. They're going to measure the district. So my question is, how do you balance that push towards getting those 3 metrics and to get the distinguished or the SMEDI distinguished status, while also having to make sure that some of the things you have to do are related to the members and the clubs?
That is a fantastic question, Liz. And I'm sure it's directed to one of the past district directors. Wonder which one would take that.
I've already unmuted Eddy for that one for you. I've made your life easier. Mike Storkey, past international president, remember the member. Easy phrase, but it actually is. We are a membership organisation, and we are driven by what our members need. So when we are in our roles, we are there in a stewardship role. Whatever we are doing, we are stewards for that year. Whatever we are doing, members are the most important part of our organisation. We should never ever forget that, no matter what role we're in. Within Toastmasters, we have core values, and one of those core values is excellence. And I think this is what we strive for when we talk about excellence. Excellence in our meetings, excellence in the education program, excellence in the training we deliver. If we deliver excellence for our members, then we have no problem with our members being supported as much as possible. So it is about remember the member. They are the most important person. And also we are all members of this organisation as well. So we are also looking to strive to achieve for ourselves, but also for our fellow members that we are supporting. Maybe in District 91, maybe outside. People ask for help. I should say in Toastmasters, we normally say yes. So for me, it's remember the member, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Helena. Remember the member. And with that, I would like to get Andy. Has he unmuted for his question?
Thanks, Eddy. Just a very quick answer, really, in terms of the panel. Before you started your district leadership journey, as in the DLT, what is the one thing you wish you'd have known?
Rupa is thinking. Over to you, Rupa.
Helena wants to go, so I'll let Helena go. But yeah, I think I've got my answer. Go for it.
I think it's the time commitment. I don't think that as you are a leader, you understand just, we talked about general commitment before on, commitment and volunteering within the organization. I think the reason that people often step away is they don't understand the commitment that they're giving and the time commitment that is involved. And when you step up for district leadership, there are online calls, there are peer calls, there is training, there's places to travel, you go to visit clubs. There's a whole plethora of other things that take place which go on behind the scenes. And having been an admin manager myself, and Amy being an admin manager, she would have been sort of also encouraging Rupa to go, by the way, you've been invited to go and join this, or can you do, or can somebody else from the DLT represent the district at? So there are often times when you're busy looking to support the wider community within Toastmasters. And that's when you think the time commitment. Sometimes it's just seems a general thing, but when you actually have a look at the overall year and 3 years of leadership, and then immediate past district director, where you are still committed, you're talking 4 years of committed time to the district. So it's not a straightforward just one year and you're out. You've got, if you're going the whole way, you commit for 4 years. So it's a huge commitment. We're very fortunate within our district. We usually get that commitment. But back to Andy's question, time. That is a huge thing to learn to manage your time.
Yeah. Can I just jump in because it directly follows on from what Helena said? I mean, absolutely, I'm the same as Helena. It's the time, but just to finesse that a little bit, for me, it's the front loading of the time commitment. So for me, like the first 3 months were just absolutely frenetic and they were difficult. I'm not going to lie, they were extremely difficult. And that was the same for my presidency. So I'm not going to say I wasn't entirely prepared. Obviously, the level of work, the level of pressure and which is why I always talk about stepping up from like a, League One to a Premiership football team. Is like the scrutiny's higher, the games come thicker and faster, there's less time to ruminate, you've got to get on with it, but you're working with a high level of team who support you. So I think that's the thing. But for me, the other thing is like July, August and September are going to be really tough. But it does get easier. That's the thing. You can't think of every quarter as the same. The first quarter is there's a lot more time commitment. But if you put good systems and you build a good team, things get easier over time. And I think more people need to be made aware of that actually when they volunteer. Because if you're in the first position, you're going, I extrapolate this for the whole year, I can't deal with this. Well, that's not the way it's going to be. So people need to be appraised of that. Certainly, I would have found it helpful to know that. Maybe I should have known, but yeah, I got an inkling from my presidency.
Okay, I know Rupa wanted to answer that question, but we are running short of time and there's still a question coming from Nikita. I'll take that question from Nikita and probably pass on to Rupa to answer. So Rupa, get ready. Over to you, Nikita.
Thank you. A very quick question, hopefully to everybody. What's the one thing that has really surprised you during your time, surprised you about yourself in your time as a district leader?
Rupa?
In true table topic style, I'm going to answer the previous question and then maybe rumination will lend itself to Nikita's question. But actually, I wouldn't just say time in relation to the previous question, but actually, I went from division director to club growth director, and whilst I thought I was prepared and I thought I knew, there is still a significant shock and a jump from that level to the next level, and ultimately it can be a full-time, I'd say club growth director and district director is effectively a full-time job over and above a full-time job. Program quality, yes and no. Very quickly on Nikita's question, I think it comes back to something I said earlier. It is a journey of finding yourself.
Right. We have reached the end of our session for this afternoon. It has been a pleasure sharing this session with a wonderful panel, picking their brains on their leadership experience, their thoughts, their feelings, and reflections on their leadership journey. District 91 is looking to you as the next generation of leaders. Reflect on what you have heard today. Why not stretch yourselves and go for the position of area director, division director, or district leadership roles? With that, I will now call the panel discussion to a close. Thank you for all those questions and thank you for attending to this session. Feel free to stay around for a few more minutes if you want for social chats if you wish. Thank you, everyone.